Clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
Welcome to the 25th episode extravaganza of Crosstabs. I'm here with Brian Iverson, my co-host. This is Reagan Canope of just way too fancy of a microphone. I sound way too good on this microphone. I still can't listen to the podcast. Yeah, absolutely.
Are we now an
We're gonna go ham.
extravaganza? That's great. I know we're still working
25
on
episodes.
intros. At some point, we're gonna find one, and it's just gonna be great. We're just gonna stick with it. So
Probably not, because that would require me to prepare, which I don't do. As
well,
you know.
25 episodes in now, Reagan, you're probably going to be like, now it's kind of more fun. We don't know what you're going to say at the beginning.
I listen to one of my favorite radio hosts is Eric Erickson. He has a really good conservative show, but he tells people like it is. He isn't just a talking points guy. And he reminds me a lot of Rush Limbaugh, how Rush Limbaugh he just doesn't hold back. He tells you what he thinks and tells you the truth. And he's really good. And so I've been trying to watch and listen to him more and try to think about and work on, my podcasting skills. Sure. And then every time I edit, I go, wow, I say a lot.
I'm going to be working on my Obama cadences to make sure that when you are ready to say what you need to say, it is on point because it matters.
Let me be clear. That was my Obama.
Have you noticed like that's been seen more and more of that with Kamala Harris? I know everybody wants to hear our take on the debate, stuff like that. I mean, clearly, I don't think Kamala won that debate. I think Trump lost that debate. But just like Joe Biden lost that debate, I don't think Trump won that debate. I think that was there. Kamala is definitely coachable, and she can really be chameleon-like, right? She can go down to Georgia and sound like she's from Georgia. She can go up north and sound like she's, Obama. So let me be clear. She's doing a good job, man. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, I didn't think she had it in her. I think this whole idea of shielding herself from even friendly media, I don't know how she's getting away with it, except for that, I have to, the Russian conspiracist in me says that this must be coordinated scenario, because I don't think if Trump was not doing any media at all, ABC and NBC and all those people, they'd be going ape shit right now. Like, you're not talking to anybody, you're not doing the things. And I just think that it has to be coordinated on some level. But it's the hill we have to climb, people. I mean, we got to go climb it, and we got to win, and we can't sit here and complain. We got to go beat them. And that's just how it works. And I wish there was a better way, but I mean, I think podcasts like ours and other podcasts, Eric Erickson, all these people you're talking about, it is changing the way people consume media. So I'm hoping that over time we see more platforms like this emerge. I know it makes it harder for us to do our job as consultants and getting ourselves out there to those people. But I think, freedom is great, and freedom of the press and freedom of being able to consume stuff is so important. And also freedom that if she doesn't want to say crap to you and I and every other press out there, it is her right. Like, she's not required to sit down and do interviews with, the Today Show and Fox News. I mean, she's not required to do it. I do wish we would have more debates, because I think debates matter, and I think debates have really changed presidential outcomes in history. And I think that's the part that has bummed me out. I think we should definitely do more of those, and that part, I think, is where the American people are getting shafted.
I think I will point out for our Democratic listeners, who I'm sure would text me this if I don't say it, that Harris has put out a challenge for another debate that Trump hasn't accepted yet. Now, his reasons for doing so might be good. They might not be good. But I, they would point that out to me. I'm going to get that text. So I'm putting that there so that I
Well, I
don't get those
agree.
texts.
Yeah, I
But
agree. I mean, I think Trump's dumb not to do it. I think that I truly think he's dumb not to do another debate.
And I think because he could probably get, I mean, you could do it on a different network. You don't have to do it with ABC again. She's not going to accept the Fox News debate, though. And so I do think that that's a little bit unfair from her side because you have Fox News, which is more right leaning. You have ABC, NBC, CBS, all more left leaning media outlets. So you could make it a little bit more fair where you do, or even if I were Trump, I would say do two debates on the networks, ABC and NBC, and one debate on Fox. But all that aside, I would say I agree with your thought in terms of Harris winning the debate or Trump losing the debate instead of Harris winning it. But I will say that I do think the first like 5 minutes, which is pretty much all I watched before I had to go do dad stuff, I was seeing him answer really good, targeting her on her flip flopping. He said she changed her platform to his so many times. He thought about sending her a MAGA hat. That was a pretty good line. He basically
Yes.
didn't recover after they asked about abortion. And part of it was because Harris and her side were very well prepared. They knew exactly what kind of things gets Trump off message and tangents. And he's got to work on that. If he's going to win, he has to work on staying on his message because I think his message is pretty effective. The voters are upset and they're angry. This is something that Eric Erickson was talking about. I'm stealing his thought here. Upset and angry voters don't reelect the administration that's currently in office. They just don't. They switch it. Now, what they do with Congress, who knows, right? I think it's a dogfight all the way there. It's a dogfight for the Senate. It's a dogfight for the House. It's a dogfight for the presidency. Those debate moments that you're talking about, though, I saw the Ronald Reagan movie a couple of weeks ago, and there's a debate moment in there with Jimmy Carter, and there's a debate moment in there from 1984 when Ronald Reagan makes a joke about his own age and stuff like that, right? Very famous clips in these debate moments. Those debate moments, though, only work when you have enough of the country that can really change their mind. And that's the one thing about the partisan divide that I think we've lost in those debates is people are so stuck in their camps and the candidates are so stuck in their lanes that they're too scared to move outside of them because they're worried about the challenge they're going to get from the right or left flank, that they can't take those positions that will gain them a lot of voters and help them win 40 states, 49 states, right? Everybody's really stuck in their lanes. And I think that that's too bad because I think, when Bill Clinton pivoted from the left to the middle, he got more successful. He worked with a Republican Congress.
Mhm.
Ronald Reagan had to work with a Democratic Congress. I think if we saw more of that, I think we'd be in a better place. But that's sort of my sort of take on there.
That's fair. I think that everybody would agree. I Democrat or Republican. I I think what we have now is my last take on is what we had before was we had Biden Trump that nobody really wanted to see again, and now we got Biden Harris that the Democrats are happy to see, and the Republicans are just kind of like squandering around trying to figure out what's up. And I just feel like there's been some really huge missteps on the Trump, and they ran such a flawless campaign with Biden on the run up, and I feel like they kind of got hit in the mouth on this one and they're not sure what to do with it. And I think that's a problem. Every campaign needs to know how to react and take blows and take a negative day, take a negative week and turn it and spin it. And I mean, I know he's got the people around him. I mean, the people, working on his campaign are brilliant people. So and obviously they're brilliant on the Kamala side too. I'm not going to get into the policies and all that sort of stuff. There's everybody and their brothers talking about that, on every podcast, but it, I get frustrated because I feel like when they keep saying a threat to democracy, this person, that person, I just feel like we're losing the back of the train going around and giving the speeches to the people, all over the country and those things that America was founded on, and that idea that you have to get out to the people and really, and now we're like having these all Now who has bigger rallies, who's paying who to show up, who's leaving early, who has it's just, who hates what rock star and who gets like, I just that stuff to me is just so doesn't matter. Like I want, what's your vision for this country? And we're not getting any of that right now. We're just getting all this noise. So, but at least Trump has a full security detail now, Reagan. So we should be okay.
I was trying to think of a clever transition, but I don't have one. OPB wrote an article that I sort of been waiting for them to write for a while. And Dirk
You
Vanderhart, friend of the program. Oh, maybe you too. I don't know. You may have some thoughts here.
I was quoted in it. I mean,
Yeah, we should read your quote first. After I summarize the article, I'll read your
all
quote,
right.
and then Brian, I'll ask you for your thoughts first because I think you get the opportunity to first crack at this one. So, the headline in OPB, friend of the program, Dirk Vanderhart, with fundraising flagging. I don't really know what flagging means here, but
I felt like
Oregon
that was the
Republicans, I would say lagging, but Oregon Republicans' ambitions rely on Greg Walden. And what he's talking about here, analyze some fundraising from the past couple of election cycles, and they found that Republicans are down pretty substantially. And I would like to note the 21-22 cycle with leader Vicky Breeze Iverson and leader Tim Knope, best ever fundraising cycles uh, for Republicans, really, in a midterm um, with excellent coordination. So, and in fairness to some of the current leaders, you can't compare a presidential year to a off election year because those are different seats in the Senate. In the House, it's always the same, but those are different seats in the Senate. So you have different maps, and last year's map was a better map than this map. Everybody knows that. But anyway, they're comparing all this data, and Republican fundraising is down. And Brian Iverson, friend of the program as well, quoted in this article, quote, "The lobby isn't giving to Walden." You're of course referring to basically generally business lobby that gets involved in campaigns.
Yeah.
Said Brian Iverson, a Republican consultant who oversaw Senate Republican campaign efforts in 2022. Quote, "It's additional dollars." So you were quoted in this article. You're familiar with Greg Walden. I don't have to tell you who he is. You don't have to look him up on Wikipedia. Also, here is a little note about a controversial memo issued by Evergreen and House Republicans.
What?
So I don't know what question you want me to start with, Brian. So I'll just say take it away. How's fundraising going for Republicans?
Well, let's cover the fundraising because I think that's, probably more germane to, where we're at in the scenario of today, because that matters more than anything, really. I mean, we've said this on the podcast many times that, money is the mother's milk of politics, right? Without it, you just can't do anything, right? It's just too difficult to do basically anything. So other than door knocking and free events, it's about all you have to like reach voters. And we would just spend some time talking about, trying to get out there and reach voters in this atmosphere in which we live today, and really without paying to be on radio, paying to be on TV, paying for ads, paying for space and newspapers, all the things. It's really difficult to get your message out to voters, and without money, it's very, very hard for a candidate. What's really hard is if you're a caucus, and as of at least as of reporting now, if you're the House Republicans and you only got $160,000 cash, that's very difficult, especially if you're trying to go out and win seats and pick up seats and do all the things. So it's very difficult to do when you don't have money. So that is a valuable resource, and obviously Senate Republicans are in the same predicament. I think that part of the job when you're in the caucus is selling a story. to investors and also to Congressman Walden. Like you have to. Nothing was given to Tim and Vicky when we were doing stuff before. It wasn't given. It was we had to prove. We had to make our case every single week when we would get on the phone or we would talk about stuff or if I wanted an additional ask, I would have to say, hey, this is what I want to do and this is why. And I think that's probably part of the problem. And in this article, a couple of the people that work with Evergreen and stuff, they were just saying, well, they basically laid it off before as other people were known. And I just kind of, I don't know. I think that's really kind of not fair to say that either, because we were known, but well, with it being so loud with the former leader and selling real estate in the background, she's got to do what she's got to do. But she tells me she's quiet now, Reagan. So back at it.
All right.
With the cash coming in or not coming in, it's just difficult. And the Democrats really are, like the article talked about, they're basically going to raise the same amount of money they raised before, the same amount of money they raised in 2020, the same amount of money. Like for them, it's just a machine. They just turned it on. It just goes and they do the same old, same old. And because I remember last cycle, and you probably remember this, there was a lot of Democrat legislators that were calling around to business lobby and to trying to start scratch. Hey, how do we go get money for what are we doing wrong that we're not getting checks from businesses in Oregon? And we're like, maybe fix your tax policy. But I think that's that was kind of, well, it's kind of a no-brainer. But I know they were going around trying to raise money because they saw us eclipsing them. And I think, and they know that if they didn't have the money, we would have won Bill Kinnemer's seat if we didn't run out of money. And they were able to come up with money last minute and spend 3.2 million to our 2.6 million. And that last, $600,000 probably made the difference there for us getting a 14th seat in the Senate. So these things matter. And I don't know what's going to happen with these caucus PACs and their dollars. I think they're going to do their best to pitch to the lobby they can and do what they got to do. The Senate has got a smaller map, and we'll get into that next time when we talk about the legislative races. We'll definitely talk about that. But they've got three races that are even on the table. Or on any table, however big you want to make it. There's really only three that are relevant, I would say, to the discussion. And the House still has the same number of races that were on the table last cycle. So the House every 2 years, it just doesn't matter. So I would say more of the onus is on the House, where everybody saw more opportunity from how close they came last cycle within numerous number of seats, right? I mean, we're talking between 160 on the low end and 900 on the high end. That separated the difference between Vicky being Speaker of the House. So you would think that would be a good story to tell, to raise money. Apparently.
Well, and I think as you're talking about, you got to make the pitch. And, earlier in the year, an undated memo from Evergreen PAC, which is the House Republicans under Jeff Helfrich. They have a new logo with trees and a mountain. I bet it's Mount Hood, Brian. I bet it is. It's the most used political icon in the state of Oregon, probably right after the state shape. And so they distributed this memo to lobby, and I think it's an attempt, certainly, at making their case. They kind of give a current legislative outlook. And it says, Evergreen PAC's singular goal is to maintain House Republican numbers with a possibility of several targeted pickup seats, preventing Democrat supermajorities in both chambers. And, we broke the supermajority in the Senate last cycle. Did we break it in the House last cycle, Brian, or was it?
Yeah,
we in the super? So supermajority was broken in both chambers. And this goes back to Walden founding Bring Balance to Oregon. That was the whole point. More balance. We didn't have any significant new taxes passed in the last session, and that was guaranteed because we broke the supermajorities. They were going to be raising taxes on alcohol. Otherwise, they were going to be raising taxes on a bunch of other stuff. None of that happened because the supermajorities were broken. So they're right about maintaining that. They're on the right track here. And that's basically the last thing they get right in this memo. Due to term limits, unfriendly redistricting, and the latest polling data, the Oregon State Senate will likely fall into Democrat supermajority as they only need to pick up one seat. Okay, I just want to take these one by one, Brian. Term limits don't exist in Oregon, okay? It was being declared ineligible to run based on a constitutional requirement, but it's not a term limit. Unfriendly redistricting, which is just a flat out lie, because if they're talking about Senate District 27 in Central Oregon, that was a hard district before it got redistricted, okay? That was going to be hard for us to hold regardless. Tim Knopp would tell you that.
Yep.
Other than that, every other Senate seat was basically like the Senate redistricting was a coup. I know the House doesn't love their map as much. Senate redistricting was really good. And that's what allowed us to pick up so many seats in the last cycle. It was a contributing factor.
Which makes the House seats better. So, yes.
Right. It does. It does make some of them better. Not all of them, though. They were pretty good at keeping the metro area the way they wanted it. And the latest polling data, there was no polling data available for any Senate race at the time that this memo was distributed. But again, whatever. Current Senate.
We didn't poll. So unless the House was polling Senate races,
yeah,
which maybe that was their strategy, Reagan. Hey, let's go poll the Senate Republican races.
just do the polls. It's just like they're working for Wagner at that point. I mean, goodness. 17D, 13R, current breakdown of the Senate, which isn't even right because Brian Boquist is an independent. Likely post general election makeup, 19 Democrat, 11 Republicans. And this is where my hat flew off, Brian, because Senate District 27, a lot of people think, and I think Michael Summers is a really good candidate. I think that race will be closer than a lot of people think it will be. It's a heavy Democratic registration, right? Senator Knopp won it by 1.5 last time in 2020. We all knew it would be hard. And I think Summers is a great candidate. And I think it will be close. But a lot of people think it's going to go to Democrats, and I don't blame them for thinking that.
Well, you got to get the edge. I mean, they have a 9% voter registration, so they have the advantage. I think that's very safe.
100%. So that gives them 18, which is a supermajority, okay? But they say 19 seats. The only other seat in the realm of possibility for us to lose is Dick Anderson on the coast, which also has a slight but much smaller Democrat registration advantage. And I just don't know a single person, not even in the Democrat. You could ask Oliver Mugley at the Senate Democrat Leadership Fund when he's not on the record. And he will tell you it is going to be nigh impossible to beat Dick Anderson. Okay? He didn't participate in the walkout. He was there. He has been an excellent representative of his district. He's not a hardcore partisan. He's just looking for solutions. He's working on the issues that people. I'll just go down the list, okay? But House Republicans are like, nope, Dick Anderson's going to lose. The sky is falling, and that's why you have to invest in House Republicans. And let me just tell you that if we're losing the coastal Senate, House Republicans are getting their butts handed to them. Like, there's no scenario. I don't know that everyone understands this. And they put term limits. And he's got some folks that are from out of state that are probably a little new, still learning Oregon, obviously, because they don't understand the term limits thing. They may not understand that these individual House districts are just half a Senate district. So if you're getting your butt whooped in the Senate, you're getting your butt whooped in the House. It's the same districts. Gorsuch in East County. Both of his reps are up this time. Those were both close races last time. If Gorsuch runs away with it, the House candidates are going to lose. But no, they say that while the Senate loses 2 seats, potential makeup of the House, 32 Democrat, 28 Republican, which has not happened since 2012, since immediately after the wave, okay, when we picked up 6 seats and got to 30, and then the following election we lost 2. There's more in here. They put the budgets in there for their pickup seats, which, like, why would you send that out to everybody? Because this stuff gets shared. Blows my mind that you'd write this memo and then write it and then look at it and go, that should be distributed.
dude, we write memos for one thing, so people see them.
Right.
You don't write memos for it to be internal. Like so the excuses are just horseshit. And it was really meant to basically, I don't even know what it was meant to go after. Like, oh, basically goes back to our fundraising question of we're screwed, so we're going to take your money. Basically, I mean and to say anything less than that, and you know what, and I like Representative Helfrich. I mean, I really do. I don't think this really. I don't think he was the one that said get that memo out so people can see it. I do truly probably believe that. Did I just basically say truly probably? So I'm giving myself some leeway there. I don't know, but I know it came from staff.
Yeah.
And I know that if that was my staff and I was running that caucus, whoever sent that memo out, they wouldn't be there anymore.
Fired.
Yeah. Like you're an idiot, like you pointed out in all the numerous references in there. None of that shit is even true of all the things they said. And two, why do you attack your friends? It just doesn't, it does do no good to sit there and attack our friends across the aisle. Like it doesn't make, or not, I mean, across the chambers there. It makes no sense. So unless it was deliberate, right? Unless it was like, hey, but it was done in July, which is even weird too, because that's kind of when all this stuff gets started. So
this is something I wanted to debunk too, because if you read this article, you'll think that this July memo is being disavowed as outdated in September. They said it was outdated in July when it was leaked and being distributed. So I want to make that clear. They said, oh, the memo is outdated, like days after they sent it out to lobby. Okay. Which, like, I guess technically true. The state of all these races. Suddenly, Bryan, I'm glad that you've been working hard since July to put Dick Anderson back in the win column after he was in trouble in July, apparently, based on the memo and all the polling they did. Right. So anyway, I wanted to make that clear because if you read the article, that's not immediately clear. Because it sounds like Dirk's been working on this story for a while. I mean, you gave your quote a while ago.
in July, I gave my quotes to him. They weren't.
In July.
I
Look,
mean, that's what
look.
I literally.
He's very busy. Dirk is very busy at OPB. He writes all the stories. They're very important. He's huge. It's very important. I don't know why I did Trump just then, but it felt right.
Well, sometimes when they call you about, because the memo, obviously I was pretty hot when the memo came out, and it got leaked out there to everybody, and Dirk called me about it, and I just said, oh yeah, I've seen the memo, and then he asked me a little bit about it. And of course we didn't have any money in fundraising then, so like the story hadn't changed. I think he was just waiting to see, or I think all of us were like, okay, well, let's see what they do, and then he gets to September and realizes they're still horribly behind in fundraising. So now it makes the memo more relevant to his story, right? So
yeah.
But I did call Congressman Walden and I said, hey, this was said in July, just so you aware. Like, I'm not talking about their fundraising today and all the things like, Anderson's doing a good job fundraising, and he's out there working his tail off. His opponent, they apparently the Senate Democrats did some polling based on their in-kind contribution to his opponent. They did some polling. It looks like early September. I'm not seeing a lot of money flow to her. She hasn't bought a TV ad yet. We've been up on TV for over a month.
Yeah.
We're in a good position. The coastal communities have really been versus like to your point with Michael Summers, right, where we've seen over the course of time, and you and I both know Ben very well, cutting our teeth, especially legislatively and locally races there. I mean, I ran city council races in that town forever with your dad, even, and Andy High and all those guys back in the day, until about 2014 when things just shifted.
Yeah.
Everybody started moving in from California, including Anthony Broadman, or maybe he was Seattle.
I want to emphasize this. As we were going to all of the, I call them pity parties in 2008, when Republicans just got smoked, okay, up and down the ballot. we went to the victory party for city council where Republicans took over the Bend City Council in 2008. That's how different the politics of Bend were. You had a blue wave sweeping the country, and Republicans
Yeah.
are like, "We took the Bend City Council, hooray!" Like, and
Welcome.
it was competitive, like you said, until 2014, and then the wheels just fell off the wagon.
One of my best friends, Scott Ramsey, won that city council race by 2 votes.
I know a little bit about races with 2 votes. Yeah.
Yeah, you were there. We both have had 2 vote. Of course, yours was a 2 vote loser. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's the difference. It's the experience.
Oh, they met
So
Jamie Cade. I won that primary by 33 votes. She was
yeah,
33 at the time. I think,
yep,
it was so
nice.
ironic, these close vote races. But anyways, regardless, my point is that the coast has just been, and I can tell you just because I know the numbers on the coast, right? So like even the Trump Harris stuff is vastly different than
Yeah,
the Trump Harris stuff in Central Oregon. So, you're swimming more of an uphill river in Central Oregon versus, in the coast where you feel like you're kind of swimming, you're swimming with the tide to shore, right? It just feels a little bit better. It's just moving a little bit more our way over there. And that, it just means basically you got a center right versus a center left movement with that movable middle. And doesn't mean that Michael Summers can't win that center left argument because Anthony Broadman is about as left as they come. I mean, there's a great OPB article that people should go read that talks about how that far left city council movement set up to where it is today. And Anthony Broadman's in the center of all that and responsible for all the homelessness and, all the stuff that has become Bend today. So the elitist on the west side and, the rest of them living on the east side that can't afford to live on the west side. But and we'll get into that when we talk legislative races more. But I just, with this memo, my last thing on it is just this. If you're smart, sometimes you should keep your cards closer
mm-hmm.
to your vest. And in this world of politics, you always keep your cards a little closer, especially when you're talking about money. Especially when you're talking about polling. And we all know, we can look and see what a House race costs, but to give everybody kind of the same number is just, it's silliness. Like a House race in Portland area is going to cost, to win it, it's going to cost way more than $600,000. Janelle Bynum spent $1.2 million to Corey Haynes's, all we had left was 220 some grand or something. So she spent, 6 times the money to win that, to retain that House seat. So to say that you can go win and pick up a seat with $600,000, I think it's, what it is? It's just naive.
You had a second quote in the bottom of this article that I just found.
Oh, thanks.
About the memo. Writing it was clearly uninformed, Iverson said. Putting it out was even more ill-informed. It backfires because everyone knows it's not true. And I think that's the most interesting part of this, is there was so much about that memo that was just so clearly not accurate. And you put it out anyway. You didn't have anybody look at it that had better headspace for this. The lobby that got it, we're going to be disappointed because they know a lot of this stuff. Right. And then to get to Walden, I just want to cover this. Everything that Walden has done has been really helpful to Republicans. I mean, we would probably be dead in the water without Greg Walden and Bring Balance and Phil Knight, right? They've done a lot of really important things. I remember in the 22 cycle,
I hate to say we'd be dead in the water, but I mean, sure.
It's hard to argue how, because we're getting so badly outspent. I mean, you just look at these charts, especially House Dems. I mean, their numbers are just rising like rocket fuel. We keep pretty good parity with the Senate. We do okay on fundraising, keeping parity with the Senate, right? But the House Democrats are just like 2.2 million, 2.3 million. Those are outrageous numbers. And those numbers, you just can't compete with those numbers without outside cash. Now, this isn't taking in individual members and how much they're raising, and if they don't transfer through the caucus to candidates, and then what candidates are raising, right? So there's way more money in the system than even these charts show. This is just the caucuses.
There's about $30 million or so,
right,
collectively in the system last cycle, and I think that, and that's including Greg Walden's, cash that he brought in. So there was about 30 million, I think, spent collectively amongst both chambers and both parties.
Right. And I remember, so we had gotten, not we, I say we, Republicans. Green Balance had gotten the first million from Phil Knight, and then I think late in the fall or like early fall there was a second $1 million or $2 million contribution from Phil Knight. I
Million.
went over to the printer. I went over to my computer. I photoshopped a crown on Greg Walden's head. I printed it off and I put it on the wall because that was just the level of excitement. That's where we end. We still thought the red wave was coming. It was very exciting. We still did way better than most states did in that cycle.
Well,
But
here's
that's
the, and I'll add a caveat to that. I think Reagan
yeah,
is
go ahead.
what Greg did beyond, and there's some institutional money, right? I mean, the timber guys and some of those that have given to Greg, and I would say, and I'll point this out in more with more zeros than they did previous
Right.
to just the leaders. So he's brought more money to the table from those traditional or institutional, I would say, donors on our side of the camp. But I say what the biggest thing that he really did in working for both leaders as I did, what it really did is it freed up Tim and Vicky's ability to go raise other money.
Mm,
Like you were like, hey, okay, so we got these 30, 40, whatever the number of donors were, right? And we got this, and we're going to go find new money and do this stuff. And it was like, oh, awesome. Great. Now we can go to national, and now we can go hold these, business fundraisers across the state that we did and pick up 100 grand here and 100 grand there. And that really freed up the leaders to be able to go do that and not have to do those other fundraisers, and you just say, okay, let's set this money aside and then let's go find new money. And I think you have to constantly be looking for new money. That
yeah.
is the number one thing that you can do. I don't care if you're a candidate or a caucus, is you're always looking for new money. The Democrats are always looking for new money, right? They can't keep going back to SEIU every time and the teachers union and local 48 electric unions pack to give them the other 20 grand because there's only so much, right? So they're always looking for new money too.
Well said. Well, speaking of people who could probably use some new money, let's talk about the Secretary of State race. So we're officially going into preview mode. Dennis Linthicum probably needs a bit more than Tobias Reed does at the moment. Dennis has raised 55,000, Tobias Reed 1.2 million. Secretary of State race. I'm gonna say this sets up to be a bit of a knockout, a bit of an easy race for Mr. Treasurer Reed. He's term limited out of his time as state treasurer, and so he's running for Secretary of State. Running a pretty normal Dem campaign, not getting too aggressive on any particular issue. That's a social issue or something like that, and avoiding the mistakes of Brad Avakian. I do not think Dennis will repeat his namesake's victory in 2016. Richardson had more name ID from his governor's run, more money, and a much worse opponent. Linthicum probably looking at the inside of the Senate office for his wife at this point in 2025.
Yeah, well, we can almost even lump this one and Boquist's seat, the treasurer seat, really together because neither
Yep.
one of them is raising any serious money, or I would just say even mounting. I don't see press releases. I don't see
No.
really nothing. I don't see them going around to doing the town halls or even getting the Republicans whipped up. I said this too. I was giving a presentation to my Central Oregon Federation of Republican Women, and I was talking about statewide races, and I took these two and I just put it over in the corner, and I said, "Well, they're done." But let me tell you about
Yeah.
and it was so funny because one of the ladies after we were done, she says, "So how come Dennis Lithicum isn't going to win?" And I'm like, well, because he's raised $55,000. So
Yeah.
I do I would beg to see that if 20% of the Oregonians even know he's running for Secretary of State. And I don't, so I just don't see it, right? I don't see the path. I don't see the things that he's doing to mount any sort of challenge like Dennis Richardson had in the past. So it's just kind of a no-brainer. The worst part is
If
if Bias hangs a 60 6238 burger on him or something. I mean,
Yeah.
if he doesn't get to the Joe Ray, if he doesn't get to the Joe Ray line, of what is that? What do we say that is? 42% roughly.
Yeah, it's like a low 30, low 40. Yeah.
That would not look good for us. So
Yeah.
and I'll still vote for Dennis. It's not that I won't. I think you've actually come out and said you're voting for Tobias Reed, I believe, in this
Yeah,
race.
I did. I did tweet that.
Have
I
you
haven't gotten a
endorsed him or just said you're
I'm not saying that I'm endorsing him
okay.
necessarily.
I was going to break some
Does
news.
count. It probably does count as an endorsement. It's probably not his top 100 most valuable endorsements. But I will just say that from what I've observed about him, that's different from a lot of the other candidates, is pretty no nonsense, pretty focused on just having an effective treasurer's office. He's been he's been a rational voice on legislation in the legislature. I don't want to go too deep into that, but when bills come up, he says normal stuff about them. He says the right thing. He says the truth about them. He doesn't just go up there and spit out party talking points. And I think that's what is likely to make him a good Secretary of State. Like, for all of the problems that the Democrat Party has, they should be happy and they should not give Tobias Reed any grief for anything he does in the Secretary of State's office, because all he's going to do, I believe, is clean it up. That's what I think he will do. I think he will clean it up. I think he will run a tight ship. I do not think that he's going to put up with any of the BS from Republicans about stolen elections either. Okay. So he's not going to be opening it up, like looking for stuff that isn't there. I think he believes in vote by mail. I think he's a normal Democrat in that way, but I think he'll be normal. I think we'll be free of scandal for however long he's there. And that will be, frankly, pretty nice.
Well, I sure hope you're right, because he will be the Secretary of State. So
yeah.
I don't know Tobias as well as you. But really, I just know that I beat his team in the basketball tournament. But outside
Nice.
outside of that, I don't necessarily sit down and talk policy and things like that with his team. But he is going to be fine. I know, like, to your point, I know him as reputation of being a normal Democrat, if that's makes any sense on that end of it. I think that just being kind of normal and quite frankly vanilla, and I do believe that the Secretary of State's office kind of needs somebody vanilla and kind of boring and just does the work, and especially in the wake of, like, this 300 illegal aliens and all the things that were registered to vote with the DMV and stuff like that with motor voter. I really think that it's a good opportunity for him to go in there and say, hey, there was supposed to be a firewall between getting a driver's license or an ID card and being registered to vote, right? That was the intended law. And we need to make sure of that, because 300 is too many. One is too many. And I think there needs to be that sort of mentality going in. And you know what? Have you even, Senator Lithicum is still a senator. And I don't think I saw a press release.
No, nothing.
I mean,
he's got an email list, but the problem is
I'm on it. I haven't seen that on the 300.
It's a little, yes, I agree. I don't think he's hit the issue at all, which is surprising, because it would stand to benefit him more than, because it's still Tobias Reed's party that's in control, allowing this to happen, right? And so you think he would benefit more from this issue, but you're right, not capitalizing on opportunities. And that's how you know. And I think that's what makes Dennis and Brian Boquist, who I really love. I really love Boquist. He is one of a kind guy. And there are so many people that have the one clip of him that was played during that first walkout where it's like, send bachelors and come heavily armed, and they just all think that he is a danger to society or whatever. That's not Brian Boquist. Okay, I'll just let you know. He is dangerous. He has the capability to be dangerous. He's not dangerous to society. Okay. And I think
dangerous to a court clerk, because he loves to file lawsuits.
That's right. That's
dangerous.
He won that lawsuit until it was
like, well, it's like 1 for
overturned.
7, I think. I mean, that guy runs to file a lawsuit anytime he gets the chance. Now I think
miss
he's
100%
out the
of the shots you don't take. Yes, I agree. And I think I think he'd be a treasurer, but as you note here, he's raised 13,000 to Senator Steiner's 500,000. So,
Yeah,
and
she's got
Steiner already did.
586,000 now. Yeah, I just
Yep.
looked while we were doing some stuff. So, yeah, she's clearly ahead of the curve there. And the only thing I wanted, on Dennis, what he did email about though, and this is what I just want to say is that he put out there his opinion on the ballot measures, which obviously we know 117, 118, and 119 are no-goes, right? Ranked choice voting, and obviously the 3% gross tax, and obviously the union labor stuff. But I think, he put no on the impeachment measure, which you and I, Reagan, we both know we worked hard to make sure that got out there to the voters.
Yeah.
To get it on there, because we're one of few states that have the authority to even impeach our governor.
We're the only state that does not have it, Brian. That's the thing that's been crazy about it, and it's been worked on for years. I mean, it was worked on. I know that Drazen Bossar Davis worked on it. I think it might have been her bill that got pulled forward on that. Lots of Republicans have worked on that for years, and it finally took a walkout to get it forced through. But as a candidate for Secretary of State, is telling people how to vote on the ballot measures really the most important thing that you can do? I would argue no.
Yeah, it was, especially for something that I know he was in favor of, like getting this out there. So I just think that it seems silly to me. And knowing how horrible we've had a couple of governors where we, probably should have had impeachment hearings on. If we don't have that trigger in the legislature, then what's the point of us ever trying to get the majority? What's the point of us ever trying to get to balance in the legislature if we can't hold, because the governor holds so much authority in this state. They have so much power over every agency, over every middle management position that makes a difference in so many lives of people. And if the legislature if we can't be that third branch of government to kind of like hold accountable these elected statewide leaders, we have to have that ability to be able to do that. Because even if we can just bring it to the floor, even if we can't get it passed, we can still bring it to the floor.
Right.
That's what I thought was just erroneous about and very hypocritical in his email, and I wasn't a fan of it. And I'm sure I'm probably going to get some hate mail from him on this one. But
he's, based on my reading of this, he says reach it. His that's not how podcasts work, Brian. I just want you to know that. We're still recording. I haven't published it yet.
He knows we're podcasting about him. Somehow my phone is giving him messages. I don't know.
As can be seen with recent impeachment hearings, Mayorkas, Trump, Biden, these events were never about providing justice, accountability, or honesty. So he basically just says it's a political tool. I know a lot of Republicans who think impeaching Mayorkas wasn't about politics. It was literally about conduct on the job. Same thing with Biden. Same thing with Democrats for Trump. I would be shocked if his inbox isn't full of hate mail for this take on impeachment, honestly. All right. I think we've covered Boquist basically. Yeah. It's a bit of a snoozer race. I think it's going to be a change of scenery, obviously, for Steiner, and it'll be interesting to see how her leaving her Senate seat disrupts the legislature, because now you've got to do a couple of appointments. Maybe we'll cover that in December.
Yeah,
I'll figure that stuff out. Who's likely to slot into that. So the real race, the only race statewide, is Attorney General. You've got former Speaker of the House Dan Rayfield against Will Lathrop, and the fundraising here is really competitive. Lathrop's raised $851,000, which is a lot for a statewide Republican not running for governor. That's a very high amount. Rayfield over $1 million, and both of them have commercials, Brian.
Tent cities, open-air drug markets, and violence in our streets. It's like watching the frame-by-frame death of our state, a total failure of leadership. I'm Will Lathrop. As a child sex abuse prosecutor, I stood with victims of crime to ensure that they received justice. In Africa, I led multinational teams to rescue children from human trafficking and protect women from violence. My opponent, Dan Rayfield, is a career politician who got us into this mess. He brought us tent cities, released violent criminals, and turned a blind eye to corruption in our state. We couldn't be more different. We can't keep electing the same politicians and expect different results. I know this job. As Oregon's next Attorney General, I will protect children from abuse, crack down on corruption, and take on the drug cartels. Oregon needs a wave of new leadership committed to solving problems and holding people accountable. Oregon, I get it. I'm a Republican, but I think it's time for something new.
And then here is Dan Rayfield's commercial.
Hi, I'm Dan Rayfield. I'm a Speaker of the Oregon House of Representatives. I'm a trial attorney, a husband, and one of the proudest fathers you'll ever find. Now, I'm running to become Oregon's next Attorney General to keep our communities and our families safe and ensure that all Oregonians have the opportunities they need to succeed and thrive. I had a challenging childhood. I saw up close how physical abuse and addiction impacts families. I didn't graduate high school on time. I got fired from jobs. I even ended up on the wrong side of the law a few times. But when I was ready to turn things around, I had a safe and supportive community to help me move forward. These experiences helped me see the critical role Oregon's Attorney General plays in ensuring the same safety and same opportunities for all Oregonians. Working with law enforcement and criminal justice reform advocates to tackle the drug addiction, homelessness, and crime that are impacting our communities. Keeping families and seniors safe from predatory lenders and insurance companies. Supporting folks like my single mom who relied on child support showing up on time. Helping protect our children's future by tackling climate change and holding polluters accountable. And doing more right now to keep our kids safe from gun violence. And building on the work I've driven in the legislature, standing up to national threats to reproductive health care so all Oregonians have safe access to abortion. Oregon deserves an Attorney General that will deliver on accountability, protect consumers, seniors, and kids, and won't count out the folks who deserve a second chance. I'll fight to keep all of us safe, no matter our background or where we live in this great state. I'm Dan Rayfield, and I can't wait to get started. Join me.
Oof, I about fell asleep during Rayfield's.
Well, it's too long to play on TV, as you know. Minute 48, they'll cut a different version of this.
You could see the
30 or 30, right? Yeah, for sure. So, but I would say overall, both good commercials. Rayfield kind of leaning into his troubled past, which I think will be somewhat effective. Lathrop relying on his experience. He has more because Rayfield's been, a trial attorney, not as much a prosecutor like Lathrop has been. And so I'd say, Lathrop is kind of leaning into that as he should. It's good. You've got two very quality candidates here.
Well, it really seems like they're running on different messages, which is going to be, I think Lathrop is very, backwards looking as far as like, hey, look at what's happened out there. Look at the horribleness that's there and, owning. And he had a couple good things. Hey, I know I'm a Republican, try something different. And it's very Drazen-esque. But I think it makes sense, right? It's the angle you're going for. And I'm sure if people are upset, the wrong, right track, wrong track for the state points in his direction that, hey, we're not going the right direction. So, whereas Lathrop or I think Rayfield, really, he's done the whole, remember, I've been on the wrong side of the track stuff. He's kind of played that drum for a while. He's never been in a competitive race. Except for the one time he ran against our friend Jacob, in Corvallis. But I think
very competitive race.
78-22, maybe, Jacob. I forget what the number was, but I think I don't know if that story plays as well, like, because he has to also kind of introduce himself, right, to the statewide audience. And I think that's kind of what they're trying to do, is lay down the framework of who Dan Rayfield is, statewide and all those things. And Will's done the work, man. We talked about it before. He's a workhorse, and he's been out there making the rounds. I don't know this one, like we talked about with the Joe Ray line, that low 40s. This is only a 2-person race, right? Is there any third-party candidates in this? I don't think so.
I will check, but I don't think so. I think that it was just the two.
Breaking that 50% ceiling for a Republican statewide is not an easy task. And I give him so much credit for running. I'm almost like giving him the second place accepted speech for a silver medal. But, I just don't know how you break that 50% threshold. That's and if you look at even nationally, Trump has had a hard time breaking over that 50% threshold number in these swing states. And I just don't know if calling yourself a Republican and running on the Republican ticket is where I would have gone with it. I don't know. And he did a good job of laying out where Rayfield's, been more the problem than the solution. And so he's, so I think it's good. I think this one is, money's about the same, right? I mean, Rayfield's got maybe 100,000 more than him raised roughly, but $1 million to 850. I mean,
that's comparable. Yeah.
There. Yeah. That's just, that's just who spends it better with 100 grand. That's 10% is not that big of a deal. So
only two candidates, Lathrop and Rayfield. Rayfield will have the Working Families Party. Lathrop will just appear as a Republican.
Oh, no independent party nomination?
No, I guess not. Maybe they don't like Dan Rayfield. Who knows? They certainly weren't going to endorse Lathrop. Those guys hate Republicans.
I'll implore everybody to go vote for Will Lathrop. I like him. I think he's a good guy. I like Dan too, to be honest with you. I've known Dan for a while, and I think I think we could have a worse attorney general in Dan Rayfield, to be honest. I mean, I think his time as speaker was pretty, I would say he wasn't partisan like we've had before. I think that Dan was a welcome change to Tina Kotek as speaker for Republicans. I think that I don't want to just not say nothing good about Dan Rayfield. I think statewide, we actually have a pretty decent slate of Democrat candidates, to be honest with you, versus what we could have got. So I'm not going to say anything bad there. I think Dan wins. I mean, I'll throw it out there. That's my prediction. I think Dan wins probably 55-45. Maybe
that's exactly what I was going to say.
46. If Will's lucky, if he gets to 46, I would be pretty impressed with that campaign. Of course, it sucks if you're Lathrop, but
well, I think if you're Will, you've built statewide name ID. You can run for governor. You can run for a county commission seat. You can run like whatever he wants to do next. He probably has the opportunity to do that, right? And so it's kind of a bummer that that's the way you've got to build your name ID. And in Oregon is to run for 2 years, lose, and then go win something else. But it's a strategy that's worked for a lot of people, and he can be a public service for a long time and do a really good job.
Maybe Congress. I mean, totally. One of those congressional seats, depending on. Oh, look at that! Look at me with the segue transition. But
Congress is that competitive?
Yeah,
it is.
But I mean, Congress could be a good. I think he would be a shoe-in for CD 5 or 6, if depending on what happens in those, or 4. To be the Republican nominee. I think people would hop on board that plan. I hate to talk about it, but the way that I'm seeing statewide and Oregon with Kamala Harris at the top, I think it'd be different if we were having this Biden-Trump discussion and a depressed Democrat electorate. But I think they're going to be kind of fired up to go vote for Kamala Harris. I just see it the way going. I don't see it going the right way for us.
Well, let's do these congressionals really quick. I think so. Let's start with Congressional District 4. Monique Despain against Val Hoyle. Monique $500,000. Val 1.6 million. The NRCC reported yesterday 99,000, so almost 100K in TV opposing Val Hoyle. So they're starting to invest a little bit of money. Not top dollar race money, but some money in this race. They've liked a CD4 race from the beginning. They've been working on this one. The NRCC presence has been around it. And I think that obviously Hoyle's got a couple of advantages in this race, being the incumbent, voter registration, and money. And so really it's going to come down to, did Monique make the case on the scandals and whatnot, right? I think that's basically the margin.
I would say no. I would say this race is over and Val Hoyle wins in a landslide. Sorry.
And it'll be interesting to see the margin. No, I totally I totally see that. And I think the margin will be interesting. But but if Monique has won, Democrats have had a very bad night. It would be my prediction. If Monique Despain is winning, some things have gone wrong on the Democrat side of the ledger.
Yeah, and I can fill some time, just talking about it. But the reality is you got Corvallis and Eugene,
right?
District. If you had a Trump Biden, I think you have maybe some drag where Democrats aren't as enthusiastic to go vote for Biden. But and then you got all the the Hamas caucus of the world and some of the younger people that are in Corvallis and Eugene that may not want to go vote Democrat, right? Or just not go vote at all. But I think Kamala Harris changes that equation, and their turnout numbers go a lot higher in those metro areas where Valhoyle really needs that number. The question, to your point, is how well does she do outside of those two cities? And that's really going to be interesting to look at this from could somebody else win it in the future, because it won't be Monique Despain in 2024.
Here's my prediction. We've had friend of the program, Jake Pelroy, on, and I think, like you said, Eugene is kind of the core of this district for Democrats. I think you need a popular Republican from Lane County that's been elected before to some office. Could be local office, could be state office, in order to really challenge. So if you ever see a candidate that's a local Republican that's well regarded from Lane County, and their campaign's probably just gonna be run by Jake Pelroy because he runs stuff down there, right? So if you see that happen, I think that's when it gets real for Val. But until that happens, I think she's here in Congress to stay.
Well, and veterans, here's the thing too, and I'm dealing with this. We'll talk about it in the legislative side of it next week. But veterans in Oregon, Oregon doesn't care about veterans because we suck at giving them any reason to live in Oregon, and we don't have any bases. We don't have any, so you had this kind of national Republican movement to grab all of these veterans, right? So the Sam Browns of the world, and Sheehy in Montana, and all this kind of stuff, right? So there's this like big push to get these veterans, and so they thought, oh, Monique's great. I mean, she's an Air Force vet, all this sort of stuff. Yeah, on paper, but people in Oregon just kind of don't give two rips.
I think if you were going to do that, there needed to be a coordinated effort by Republicans in Congress to fund veterans programs. There needed to be a coordinated effort by the parties to talk about veterans. But you have to layer all that stuff together to make a strategy like this work. And Democrats did this too. They tried this a couple years ago to break into the large Republican majorities. Oh, we're recruiting so many veterans. They're great on the Second Amendment, all this stuff. Nope, they got wrecked. Just being, and I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for our nation's veterans, but it's not anything automatic in politics, right? And I think that's basically the point you're making. You can't just nominate a vet and assume they're going to beat a non-vet, right?
No,
all right, let's do Congressional District 6. And here's what I'm starting to think: Mike Erickson and Andrea Salinas. Salinas 3 million. Erickson's reported 300K. My assumption at this point, the way he's laid out his campaign finance, he reported zeros until this last quarter, and then this last quarter, 300K. I guess his plan is to just make it so they can't see how much he's spending until after the race is over, right? I mean, that's the only thing I can infer from this strategy, is that he's not going to press release, I'm spending $5 million, I'm spending $3 million. He's just gonna make the buys. They'll see it when he makes the TV buys and does the mail, right? That's all I can infer from this strategy, because he obviously has more than $300,000 available. It's not like he's running a shoestring campaign. I'm assuming he's going to be able to buy some mail and TV, and that he's serious about it. He's been added to the NRCC challenger list, so he obviously showed something to them that they liked.
Well, and he came, he came 7,200 votes. I mean, that's pretty good with all the negative votes coming towards him. And Salinas I just think her TV ads suck. We should probably play.
Oh man, I'll insert it here while I use my super
TV
production powers.
Insert TV ad now.
The people who work hard every day keep our economy moving. I'm Andrea Salinas. Here's what I want to do for them. Stop giving handouts to corporate fat cats that ship jobs abroad. Stand up to companies that charge you ridiculous hidden fees, and bring together Democrats and Republicans so we can start lowering your costs, from healthcare to housing. I'm Andrea Salinas, and I approve this message because I'll keep working with anyone if they're putting Oregon workers first.
Now stop.
Well, what you just heard in that TV ad was one of the silliest things I ever have heard, which is she followed up no more giveaways to corporate fat cats, which again, what does that even mean? Are you talking about tax breaks to companies that create job? Like she's not specific about it. She just makes it act like we hand bags of cash off to fat cats. The only fat cats that get bags of cash are the fat cats at La Moda, which like Andrea Salinas. And then the next one was we're gonna crack down on the companies that charge you junk fees. I'm like, who are these people? The one I hear about is Ticketmaster. I do not go to enough concerts to care about the fees they charge you at Ticketmaster. Okay. They charge you a silly convenience fee for buying your tickets online for movies instead of buying them at the movie theater. Okay, fine. But you're basically paying an extra $4 to reserve your seat versus show up and hope there's a seat. But the movie theaters are all empty anyway. So you could just show up and not pay the fee. What are all of these junk fees? Biden's entire administration spent 6 months. We're going to ban junk fees with administrative order. What are these fees that are such an incredible inflation on groceries and gas are killing people way more than than these fees they're talking about. I would love to see a list of these fees. I don't understand what they're talking about.
It's just political rhetoric, and it means nothing. And she's just such a paper nothing Democrat candidate. There's nothing she's done in office. There's nothing she's pushed for, and it's just really been a milk toasty, just kind of. But she was the same in the legislature. She was horrible there too. So I wish Mike the best. I texted him. I mean, we've been texting back and forth because you know that I've been critical about his campaign.
Yeah, a little.
And so and I'm friends with Mike, and I've known him a while. And I said, hey, come on the pod and make your case. Well, what he does is he sends me listen to my KGW interview.
We're not going to play that
on your podcast, and I'm just because he doesn't want to answer the hard question, right? I mean, the hard question that I would ask Mike is, what are you doing different that you didn't do last time?
Right.
How are you going to counter the attacks of you being pulled over and being thrown in jail and stuff, and for cocaine and DUIs and being a hypocrite on abortion? Like you got to answer those questions. Otherwise, you're going to get the same result.
And the other thing too is second-time candidates, because they've got all that name ID. And I'm not saying Erickson's doing this. I'm just saying they fall into the trap of not working as hard as they did the first time, thinking that there's all this stuff that they've earned, and you have to work twice as hard the second time around, right? Because now you got to convince people that it's worth you going up and doing this thing again, right? And these repeats, they don't usually work, right?
I got one last thing before you're going to make some awesome transition. Here's what I believe happened, and I don't know this is literally just my opinion. I think Mike Erickson said, hey, nationally, Joe Biden, Trump, right? Biden Democrats don't show up. I put my name on the ballot. I could probably ride a Trump wave to a victory and not really do anything. The Biden stuff happens. That shit falls apart. Nobody really does any polling. Nobody really sees anything. Kamala Harris stuff hits in August. Now he's left with, oh crap. Now what do I do? And then I think he was convinced to stay in the race, because I would have left. I'd have said, dude, you got no chance of winning Kamala Harris. I mean, the Dems are going to show up and win. But I'm sure he was convinced to stay in the race by people who want to make money off of his race. And I think that's kind of what, then let's go find a way to figure out how to push you forward and see what happens, because I don't see a path that gets those people moving in that direction. Again, without my whole point of before, you have to answer some of these questions, and you can't just say, and he's not even saying she's horrible. Like, I'm seeing nothing.
Speaking of rerunning elections, I think the folks in Happy Valley are probably just like, why does my ballot always say Lori Chavez Dreamer and Janelle Bynum? They just must be mystified, right? They just must be like, what the heck? But here we are again. And I will give Andrea Salinas a smidgen of credit. She isn't running on stuff she never did, which is what Janelle Bynum is doing. Janelle Bynum is running, and I want to be upfront about this. I was not the closest person to the negotiations on recriminalization, which was a big deal during the short session. We weren't even sure it was going to happen, right? It was mostly law enforcement, DAs working, negotiating with the far left and Democrats, right? And they were negotiating this
But our
package
boss was on the committee, so I
our
mean,
boss was on
we
the
were
committee.
involved.
We were involved, and Janelle Bynum was nowhere near recriminalization. And if I can get the audio, she has a clip that basically says, I brought Republicans and Democrats together to recriminalize. Like Dan Rayfield says that, and it's legitimately true. He helped form the committee.
Yes.
He was in the negotiate. Janelle Bynum's out there like, I helped decriminalize.
As a mom of 4 kids, I worry when my family leaves the house. I won't rest until our communities are safe. In Salem, I brought Republicans and Democrats together to recriminalize fentanyl and other hard drugs.
And I was so glad that the Congressional Leadership Fund not only saw the lie, they cut an ad based on that lie and talked about how she was the leading force to punish cops after the George Floyd incident and decriminalize. She was leading the decriminalization effort. It blows my mind. I'm not one of these yell at the TV people, but when Bynum ad shows up on Hulu, my wife saw it. I was like, Janelle Bynum did none of the stuff that she is talking about right now. She just didn't do it.
Janelle Bynum now claims she helped
recriminalize fentanyl and other hard drugs.
But Bynum pushed to decriminalize hard drugs in the first place. Bynum supported Measure 110 that decriminalized fentanyl and meth.
I don't even know if I saw her during the short session. Like she was barely, and she definitely wasn't nowhere near a Measure 110 discussion. I'll tell you that. She was hiding in the corner or left the building early before they had joint hearings because she didn't want to be seen with the far lefties, right? Being going against them.
She, you know why? Because just what you said, the far left, she still had to win her primary against Jamie McLeod Skinner. So she wasn't going to be caught dead talking about how we need to recriminalize drugs because she needed all those voters to not go to McLeod Skinner. And so that's what her campaign, this is a dogfight again because of the way the district's constructed, right? It's constructed with bend to slowly tilt it left over any number of years. But I think if voters, and I'm glad, again, Congressional Leadership Fund, those guys know what they are doing, right? They're the House Republican super PAC. They are cutting through the lies. And I think if voters see that she's fake, and credit to Chavez Dreamer, everything that she's done in office, one of the most bipartisan Congress people, every time I see her press releases about what she's signing on to, she is running a congressional office that is picture perfect for the district she's in, which is very competitive, right? I think her team, they deserve a lot of credit, both on the ledge side and on the politics side, for how they've engineered and put her in a position to win. And I think that at the end of the day, she pulls it out because at this time, she's done it better than Janelle Bynum did.
Oh, I agree with you. I hope so. Well, especially with the team side of stuff. But another little tidbit on Janelle Bynum. There was this weird committee back in the day that had to do with, modernizing the legislature. Her desire, and go back and look, committee and RCC folks, go back and pull some of that crap that she was saying during that modernization. She wanted to take down all the art in the Capitol that, that just showed white people in history and stuff. And she is nothing but a race baiter. And she just lies. It's just full of lies. And her whole campaign is lies. And to say that she has anything but that she's not partisan and she wants, it's time to be done with all this stuff. And then literally the next ad comes off and she just douses Chavez Dreamer on abortion when Chavez Dreamer hasn't done anything except for really try to be pretty middle of the road on abortion. And even Right to Life even got a little wonky with her at one point.
Yeah.
Because Chavez Dreamer was trying to be a good representative for that district. And she's trying to say, hey, I'm trying to represent this district. I know it's a purple district. I know that maybe how I feel internally about something may not be how my voters want me to vote. So therefore, I'm going to have to do what I need to do because that's the way I'm supposed to represent a district. and she's doing it correctly. And I think that the group there, Vicky and I got to we went to a fundraiser with her, I think it cost me money to go to it. And Kevin McCarthy was there, and Kevin McCarthy, what he said, which was great, former Speaker of the House in Congress was there, and
Love
I really
Kevin
like
McCarthy.
Kevin. Yeah, he was so great. And he just said, I don't have to do these fundraisers for people. I come up here to do this one because I want to, because I think Lori Chavez Dreamer is the best person for this district. And this is a guy thrown out by MAGA Republicans, right? So if you're looking for somebody who's middle of the road, that's going to make the right choice for the district, it's Lori Chavez Dreamer. And if there's anybody out there listening that you want to get in these congressional races, give your $50 to Lori Chavez Dreamer. Like, give your $500 to her. Do not waste your money anywhere else and give it there.
And I think the other thing too is
Congressional
that
only.
Well, yeah, for congressional only. Yes, we have legislative candidates that also need your money. We'll talk about next week. The other thing that's interesting to me about Bynum is she chaired the semiconductor joint semiconductor committee. That's where I spent most of my time with her, and was receptive to Republicans. Now that committee got hijacked by leadership. Okay, I don't want to get into that any further, but yeah, not my favorite. But she was there on CHIPS. She's working on small business issues. She had a small business committee. There are things that she's done that she can run on, and she's choosing to run on stuff she didn't do. So I don't know if that's her team or what. And people have, people see different sides of Janelle Bynum. The one in the CHIPS committee, I thought she was relatively easy to work with. I didn't have a lot of difficulty with her personally, but the choices she's making about what to run on is so strange.
No, because she's just running to win. I mean, and that's, she thinks, and she's been told that this one moves, 2%, because it is going to be a close race. I mean, there's just no doubt about it, right? I mean, I think it's going to be close. And so she's just doing what she thinks is going to get her to victory. And she'll lie and do whatever. I mean, she basically does whatever Kamala Harris is doing right now, right? Just lie. Like, it doesn't matter. Just lie. Just say whatever lies it takes to win. Because guess what? It's political free speech. You can actually lie, and nothing matters. Like, you can just lie. And
and the other thing too, I think I forgot to tell you this. I got a poll for the 5th district, but it wasn't Chavez Dreamer Bynum. It was about Brett Smith and Sonia Feintesh, the Libertarian and Independent candidates. Both of them, I believe, are part of a Democrat super PAC of some kind attempt to siphon votes, because all they were talking about is how Sonia Feintesh is more MAGA than Lori Chavez Dreamer, how Brett Smith is the only true conservative in this race, right? They're not even confident that Bynum can necessarily beat Chavez Dreamer on her own. They put 2 candidates up in this race to try to siphon votes off. And I don't think it'll work. I think at the end of the day, Lori Chavez Dreamer, just very similar to Dick Anderson, fits the district, has done the right stuff. Voters are going to send that person back to Congress and back to the Senate, right? And I think ultimately that all that fails. But obviously they're pulling out all the stops to win this.
Dick Anderson's race.
Well, I don't mean that close. I just mean that they're similar types of candidates. I mean, I see them similarly. These are the kinds of candidates where, sure, no, they're not sending out the press release about how all the elections are rigged all the time. But these are the kind. This is a good place to end. These are the kind of Republicans you need in swing and blue districts to be able to have majorities in Congress and in the legislature. And as long as we have enough litmus tests, right? There's a handful of litmus tests that are real, that matter, right? If you're a Democrat that just changed your party registration to Republican, if you don't like Republicans at all and don't believe in any Republican values like Charlie Conrad, then yeah, we shouldn't vote for that person. But if you're a normal Republican who just isn't jumping up and down on every social and issue and Twitter issue of the day, but you're solid, you're going to represent the district, and you'll be upfront both with your constituents and your fellow Republicans that you're serving with, that's enough. Yeah. That's enough to be an 80% friend, as Reagan said, not a 20% enemy. Ronald Reagan, not me.
Listen,
and this is who we need.
Yeah, no, well spoken there, Reagan. I think, and all in my Lori Chavez Dreamer, and with this one is, I don't really know Lori, right? I mean, I've been at a couple fundraisers with her. I've chatted with her a few times, but I don't hang out with her and her friend group and all of those sort of people that she hangs around with. And quite frankly, people probably within her universe, I'm probably more contentious with on a consulting and campaign side than I am actually friendly with, to be honest with you. I mean, that's just straight up honesty there. But I've come to really respect her as a congresswoman. And I'm pretty dang critical, if you haven't noticed on the podcast. And I think she's just done a good job. And sometimes you got to reward people for doing a damn good job. And Janelle Bynum is nothing but a divider. And I think, and Lori Chavez DeRemer has done nothing but, I think, grow in this role as a congressperson and grow more and more into this role. And we owe it to her to give her another shot, to give her to go back to Congress, one more time and be even better. And Congress people have shown, and even if you look at other Congress people we've had from Oregon in the past and other areas, once they get their feet wet a little bit, they actually can be pretty dang effective. And somebody in purple districts can be really effective for the state of Oregon. If you could put somebody like Janelle Bynum in there, she's going to do nothing but go in there and be the next AOC from Oregon. Like, that's all she wants to do, is go in there and be part of the Hamas caucus and just, be a bomb thrower. And she doesn't care, right? She just wants the title.
The only way to get stuff in Congress be from a swing district, which is what, Lori Chavez DeRemer has delivered quite a bit for her district, or have seniority. And that takes a long time to build. Benson is working his way up, but he's still like 150th on the seniority chart, right? And Walden was way up the seniority chart.
Third.
And so it takes you a long time to build. It took 20 years to get there, 16 years to get there, right? And so Benson's making the long climb, but well said.
Vicky,
Bryan.
send $500 to Lori Chavez DeRemer. Oh, she just said nice.
Oh, man. All right. Well, speaking of folks who are making the long climb, 25th episode, and Bryan, I wanted to read this to you here quick. I don't really go through our stats this much, but we're over 4,000 downloads for the podcast lifetime. So text this episode to a politically astute friend, any side of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, Independent. We want to hear your guys' feedback on why you think we predicted the race is right or wrong and who's going to win. I can read some of that feedback in the next episode. I think that would be a really fun segment. We'll cover the legislature next week, and then maybe Bryan and I will cobble together a handful of local races here for a third episode. That's how we started this podcast, with our predictions, and hopefully the podcast doesn't end after this. But it's how we're closing out. It's how we're closing out this election cycle is with some of these episodes. So really good, really fun to talk with you, Bryan. Political strategy, it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy it. And I like it. I enjoy going back and forth with you on it.
It is. See you Ledge Week, so we will make it happen.
Yeah. Next week, legislative days. So I will try to edit this. It's Thursday. I'm going to try to edit this tomorrow so it gets out to our listeners. So you have something for the weekend. And then, yes, Bryan and I will be in the building. Legislative days. Come say hi. Come tell us you like the podcast. Come tell us you hate the podcast. I would like to know if we have haters. No, I want to know if we have haters. And
tell Reagan that. Don't tell Reagan.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Absolutely. No. Email hello@crosstabs.studio. Visit crosstabs.studio. Follow Bryan at Bryan G. Iverson on Twitter/X, and follow at Reagan Canope and at Crosstabs FM if you want to, but we'll retweet the Crosstabs episodes so you guys can find them. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.